Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the beneficent. Welcome. First, condolences to our Iranian participants on the loss of Sayyid Ibrahim Raisi. We had a great loss, but inshallah, everything will be fine afterward. I'm gonna review a little bit from last time and give you the most important points, okay? And then I'll show you a little video, which is very interesting. Probably you've seen similar videos in this regard. Is the voice okay? Like, are you guys hearing me well? I just want to make sure.
Yes.
Yes, okay, good, awesome, great. So anyway, I would say, thank you. So I would say the most important points from last time. Number one is that behind any action, even our own personal actions, there is an intention and there is a thought process, okay? So I'll give you one more example. There's something called ominism. Ominism is interesting because you see and you hear many youth, for example, they say, it's my life, YOLO, you live only once, or similar phrases, which indicates that you should just have fun, just live it up, kind of thing, right? So this thing pretty much came from an ancient, basically Greek mythology, that one day there was some guy who was very, very good looking and had a fiance or something. And then that fiance dumped him, and said, I don't like you anymore, or I don't love you anymore. So he got very, very sad and heartbroken. And then basically he was so depressed that he went to the river and he looked into the water and he saw his own reflection. And all of a sudden, he's like, you know what? I'm a good looking guy. Why am I sad and why am I depressed? I can have fun. I can have anybody. She doesn't matter at all anymore. It's me who should be happy. So pretty much it became an ideology that we live in this world and all that matters is that you should be happy. Now, whether it's halal happy or haram happy, it doesn't matter. As long as you're happy, everything's okay, right? So these phrases come from a background, basically, right? So any ideology, any thought, I mean, any of the movements that we have, there's also, for example, there's the naturalists, the hippies, So, for example, they wear certain dress, or the Gothics, they wear certain dress, or they paint, I say paint, their nails like a certain way, like they use black colors, they have black lipsticks and stuff. They have an idea behind it, right? There are some groups of people who actually worship devil, thinking, or they worship Yazid, believe it or not. They worship. Right? Uh, this is what happens when you buy a tripod from Timo. Uh, so anyway, I do have another tripod. The next time I'll set it up for you guys. Sorry. But anyway, so basically, where was I? So there is basically a thought process behind it, right? And so there is a philosophy, and so people follow. Okay, we were talking about the nationalists and stuff, and so basically, or the Yazidis or the devil worshippers. Like for example, their idea is that you worship the devil. So it's bad effects and it's harm is not done unto you, kind of thing. So there's a philosophy behind it. So that's one thing. Another is basically we know that in our nature Allah has installed the search for truth. And that inner instinct, that inner programming can be obscured by uh, external effects, like, for example, the media nowadays. And I'm going to play actually a very interesting video for you to show you the effect of our social life, our surroundings, and all that. And then we talked about how to come to a conclusion first about the principles of an ideology, which was using our brain, which would be the most reliable source. So when it comes to the principles of any belief or religion, we have to use our brain. And then once we believe 100% that that religion, that belief is pretty much 100% correct, then we can be obedient to the rulings. So, for example, let's say we as Muslims, we were born and were blessed with this religion, okay? The Christians were blessed with their own religion, right? So, but then that's basically given, right? And then we just followed the rulings because our parents told us, or because we read a little bit of book. But we have to also create our own um, firm belief that what I'm about to do, like, for example, pray, why am I doing it? Right? So basically, we do it with a knowledge, we do it with excitement, and we do it with love. That's the best thing, is when you do something because you love to do it, you have passion toward it. And that comes from knowledge and reaching a logical conclusion that, for example, a certain belief is the right belief. Okay. We said that some people go with inspirations, but then inspirations could go wrong. It could be just imagination or illusion. You could go with somebody just telling you to follow something, and that could go wrong, because they could mislead you. So the best thing is your brain, your logic, and Allah has given us that blessing of knowledge and basically the knowledge and logic to basically make distinction and basically make a decision, and Allah will judge us based on the decisions we make, and Allah will judge us on the efforts we put in, not the results, mostly the efforts that we put in. Okay. So, with that being said, I'm going to show you a little video. Let's share the video here. Let's see. We're going to share screen, start, and we're going to go. Oh, shoot. No, sorry. I lost that. I'm sorry. Where is it? I believe it's in this group. And I believe, yes, it's this one. So we're gonna play this video. It's interesting. Can you guys hear it well? So this is a it was a very interesting video to me for multiple reasons. Let's see if we can go back to our screen. Okay. So the interesting things that are in this video, number one, what you just saw, that the social and the basically the social effect on people. Okay. So this was more like a study. Yes, people were laughing and they were like they were amused by, um, somebody just following the crowd. But a lot of people do that nowadays, especially through the social media. They just follow the crowd. So when you watch the YouTube videos, for example, if I put up like a video, well, yes, I'm not that famous, but most people don't really follow me because they're bored and they're like, this is, philosophy, this is just a talk, lecture, whatever. But then if somebody stands up and does crazy stuff and, like screams and does, funny, supposedly funny things, whether it's proper or not, people would follow and they would have a lot of followers, right? So basically, the trend is that, okay, this is how you create a YouTube. Even though, yes, in YouTube, there are good, for example, speakers and they have a lot of followers and stuff like that. Don't get me wrong. But the trend is that you would see, like, for example, in high schools, most kids have the same haircut, for example, the mop head, good old days, or I don't know, like the Caesar cut, the whatever cut, so it's like you would see a trend in basically the youth. So it happens without some people even telling them, but the effect is there. The other thing is that it's interesting to know that through social media, we are being tested too. This AI and the whole Google thing, and they would watch what your basically what your interests are and what you shop for and things like that. And it will also feed you information to steer you too. Okay. So these are things to watch out for. Okay. So without any further ado, we're gonna basically go to the next step, which is um, which is about knowing Allah, knowing God. Okay. So basically, one of our forefathers, basically the father of religions, and basically the father of Abrahamic religions, is what is Prophet Abraham, right? And so we call them Abrahamic religions. Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, or Judaism, Christianity, Islam. So we through his thinking process, we know that there are two ways that basically you can reach understanding God. One is through logics and philosophy, and the other one is finding it within yourself. Okay. Like for example, we've felt it so many times, and we do have many narrations that, for example, somebody came and said to Imam Sadiq, "Well, teach me, the Ism al-A'zam, right? The great name that you could do anything with it, and whatever the stories behind it." Okay, so the Imam Sadiq told him, "Here, grab this bucket, go to the river, and come back." So he goes to the river and he was supposed to get some water and bring to the Imam. So he went to the river and all of a sudden an alligator jumped out. Okay. And right there he yelled, "Oh God," and then he came back to Imam Sadiq. So Imam Sadiq said, "So, what happened? And that name you just called is Ismul A'lam. So Ismul A'lam, or the greatest name of God that you could pretty much do everything, is not just a name. I mean, it could be just a name, but it's actually more the belief. what you basically from deepest of your heart, you call for God or the supreme creator for help, for example. So it could happen from within, or you could basically reach the conclusion through thinking, like the prophet Abraham, where his dad had passed away, so he was orphaned, and his mother left him with somebody. His name was Azar. Now, Azar could have been his stepdad, Azar could have been his uncle, Azar could have been just somebody who was raising him, you know. So Azar was building idols, and Abraham asked them that why are we, worshiping these things? I mean, we just made it with our own hands. And Azar got upset and said, well, you just do what I tell you to do, and these are good gods that you're creating, and you just follow our forefathers, So blindly following a belief just because their parents were doing the same thing. So Abraham didn't buy that. Abraham went into thinking and used his brain and logic and slowly said, oh, I see, like, for example, a star or basically a planet in the sky. And then he sees that planet disappear. So he's like, well, no, that cannot be God. And then he said, oh, the moon must be the God. So then it became daylight. So he's like, oh, wait a minute, maybe it's the sun, and it keeps going back and forth. So he's like, no, my God has to be always there. So he had a logic behind it, and he believed in it so much that he was ready to go against the odds. So nowadays, the more you are committed to God and trying to be on the right path, you are an odd person, which is fine. I mean, that you don't have to be matching everybody in this world. I mean, as long as you're doing the right thing, that's all that matters, right? So, So there, in this book, like for example, the chapter 6 that we're looking at here, basically there are ways to basically get to the conclusion. So, for example, the simplest way is logic, which is simple, and you get to the conclusion that you find God and you worship Him, and then basically there's another way that you keep seeing contradictions, or like for example there's a hadith from the Imam Ali or Amir al-Mu'minin that says, I have found God. I mean, obviously Amir al-Mu'minin Imam Ali, he understood God much better than this, but one of the signs he's telling us to know that there is a supreme creator is that he messes up your plans. So every once in a while you plan on doing something, and you think you have it right. You think you have planned it well. And you're like, okay, I'm gonna go from plan like point A to point B, and I have well thought through it, and it's gonna work out perfect, and it doesn't. So that's one way. Basically God calls you back. And as soon as you feel so confident about yourself, God might disturb the whole plan to say that you are not the planner, I am. There is basically a narration from Prophet David, Dawood, and God tells them, oh David, you want some things and I want some things. I like some things and you like some things. And he says that if you like what I like and you follow those steps to reach what I want, you get to it soon. This is the second time. Third time we're gonna throw this thing away. So you will get to where you're planning to get. Okay, you will be successful in that path. But if you want to follow whatever you think is right, then I will make you run away, run around until you get to the point where I like you to be. So basically, God is trying to tell him that you will be, you won't find a way other than my way. So that's the whole point. So anyway, that's like the hard way, and then there's even harder than that, which is basically somebody who basically puts himself into through so many troubles. God is trying to. Okay, that's me too. Okay, forget about that. All right. Anyway, now I feel sorry for some of our audience that have me on their big screen TV, and they're, I think, going dizzy with what I'm trying to do. Anyway, okay. One of the basically logics that we can use to say that there is a supreme creator is the order in this life. Okay, so when we look at the moon, we look at the earth, we see like daylight, we see at nighttime, everything's in order, right? So even scientists would tell you that if, for example, the Earth would basically move an inch out of orbit, basically the Earth would freeze, for example. If it moves an inch toward the sun, the whole Earth would catch on fire, basically. So we know that there is an order, and every once in a while, again, God will send us, for example, some kind of storm or some kind of lightning, some kind of earthquake or something to remind you that yes, I can disturb and disrupt this order too. So one of the ways is that, and then when you argue with some people, they say, well, no, everything happened all of a sudden. For example, like a Big Bang Theory, and it was all basically random and all that. But can you put a book together just by taking all the pages out and throw it in midair and let it land into one book in order? That's impossible. Like the chances are like one in I don't know how many millions, right? So we know that this whole order, that the creation that was created in order had a planner, right? So we know that, okay? These are some examples you could use for somebody who's trying to like argue with you that, yeah, there was a Big Bang Theory and God was not even involved. This all happened by chance. So through the creation, we can definitely reach God. Now you're going to say, well, what if somebody is a scientist, he's a physicist or whatever, and denies the existence of God, even though he's seen so many signs? God says in Quran that I will send my signs and people will be guided, and the ones who are not guided, they are sick in their heart. So if somebody is trying to pretend to be asleep, you cannot wake them up. But if somebody's sleeping, you can definitely wake them up, right? And Allah has basically a verse in Quran that says, ذَلِكُمُ اللَّهُ فَأَنَّى تُؤْفَكُونَ. Basically, why do you basically deny the existence of God after seeing all these signs? Some people, for example, when I was a teenager, I remember I used to walk home and from Woodworth Middle School, and I would say, "Oh God, if you do exist, I want you to show me a sign. Like for example, send a bird right in front of me as I'm walking. And it was interesting because multiple times as I'm walking back and forth to school, I didn't see any bird come and stand right in front of me. But then it was interesting because over many, many days that I was thinking about this, I was like, oh my God, all these signs around me, and I'm still asking for more sign. You know, I mean, that was good old days. But anyway, so now we're going to talk about a little bit of philosophy. So that was based on what we see and observe in this on this earth, and then we're going to get into the philosophy behind it. Okay. So there is existence, right? Number one, existence. So whatever we see, right, and touch and feel, okay, we know it exists, okay? Like a chair exists, a table exists because I can see it, I can touch it, right? So existence, let's just put that basically in our equation. So there are two types of existence. There's a existence that has to be a mandatory existence, which is called wajibul wujud. So that it has to exist, okay? And then there is mumkin al wujud, that it may exist or may not exist, okay? And then there is basically the third option, which is non-existence, right? So it's either existing or not existing, right? So if we talk about this, let's say my existence is because of my father and mother, right? And then I'm like, okay, so then those will be my God, Alhamdulillah, or God forbid. But then I'm thinking that, no, you know what? They had father and mother, so they should be their God, and keep going and keep going. This is called tasalsul. This is called tasalsul of ilal, you know? So you basically, it's a chain of reasons. And when you have chain of reason that keeps going in a circle, that is not logical. Okay, it has to end somewhere, right? So I am a munkar al-wujud. I am and basically possible existence. I may exist and I may not exist. Like, for example, how would I know that? Is because they said the voice is not clear. Is it better now? Are we doing okay? I hope so. So basically, my existence and the world, oh, it says still we're not working. Okay, and let's do this. Is that better? Maybe? No? Oh, okay, good. Thank you. So whether Hashem exists or not, the world will keep going. So my existence is not that important, right? So that's one of the signs to know if something is wajib al-wujud or mumkin al-wujud, right? And then when you keep going and opening the circle and you look around, you would see that nothing on this earth worth or has to exist but one being, which is called God, the supreme creator. Without his existence, nothing would exist, right? So basically, that's the philosophy of wajib al-wujud and mumkin al-wujud, okay? So again, that should be pretty clear that why do we believe in the supreme creator? Number one is the existence of this world, the order that it has, things that we see, things that we have experienced, right? That would show us that there has to be some being out there. One of the other examples we can use is life and death. Okay, something's living at a moment and all of a sudden is not. Okay, or I usually like to use, I don't know if there's any narration behind this or not, but I would love to use the example of sleeping. Okay, I want to ask you tonight, when you go to bed to sleep, just say, okay, I'm gonna sleep. and you fall asleep. That would never happen. I know some of you are very super tired, and as soon as you get into bed, you fall asleep without knowing when did you sleep. But you cannot intentionally put yourself to sleep. So here's a trick for somebody who cannot sleep is I usually do that. Sometimes when I want to sleep and I can't, I will say, "Oh God, you're the one who put people to sleep and you're the one who wake them up. So put me to sleep whenever you wish." And believe it or not, I mean, I fall asleep pretty much a few minutes later. I don't know when, but a few minutes later, pretty much. Okay. So these are the signs that we see around us that we know that there's a, existence of God. Looking at ourselves, the whole body system, our skin, how it heals, our hair that changes color, the for example, the trees as fall comes and then winter comes and then summer and spring and this, that. I mean, it's interesting. One of my friends was telling me there are two types of rain. There's one rain that comes on fall, and there's a rain that comes in spring. Well, actually, there's a third one because the water that basically feeds the trees. The rain and fall is because the leaves have to get heavy before snow comes, and these leaves should fall. And then the rain that comes in spring, it's basically to get the tips of those branches nice and soft so it can basically blossom again and grow and rejuvenate again, So it's interesting. Like if you put your thoughts and as you walk and as you look outside, you see the sun, you see the moon, you see everything around you, slowly, definitely, you will get to a conclusion that there is a supreme creator out there. Okay. If you don't get to that conclusion, pretty much you're putting yourself to sleep. And most people who try to ignore the existence of God is because they just don't like to follow rules. They don't like to be categorized. They don't like to be part of, some kind of restriction. Okay. Even though restriction is good, like when we drive, there's a speed limit. If everybody was trying to, drive as fast as they can, there would be so many accidents. There's a red light, there's a green light. You have to follow rules. So even in this world, that where we came from, where we're at, and where we're headed, it needs to have some kind of instructions, right? Okay, so now we're gonna get into talking about God's um, attributes. Okay, so since it's about 6 minutes to 9, we're gonna keep going till 9 o'clock, and then we will end it so we can go get ready for um, prayer. So God has some attributes, and the most important, one of the most, I should say, one of the most important attributes of God that He does not need anyone or anything. So self-content to the extreme, basically. So God doesn't need anybody's help. God doesn't need us to exist. God doesn't need for us to pray. God doesn't need to be worshiped. God exists whether we exist or we don't. Okay? So what do we become? We become in need, right? Hashem needs air. Hashem needs help from God. Hashem needs to be fed. Hashem needs to have companion. Hashem needs, for example, to sleep, to wake up, to work, to pray, to, follow God's order. I mean, all of these I need to do to survive, to reach salvation. Okay. But God doesn't need any of these, right? So one of the attributes of God is that it does not need anybody, any help, doesn't have any needs. Okay. One of the other attributes that are very important is that He had been existing, he always existed, and he will always eternally exist. So before any creation, okay, God existed, and after all the creation would be basically demolished and destroyed, he will exist, right? So there is no basically time limit for him. He's eternal. He's always, always there, before, during, and after. Okay. Now, the attributes of God, it's all into one. Okay. So we cannot say that, for example, there's one attribute of God, there's two attributes of God, three and three ready. No, no. This is all in one. Okay. God encompasses all these attributes into one. But we as humans, to understand it, we take it apart and study each attribute. Okay. So God is not a combination, it's one. Basically. Well, he cannot have basically a body. God cannot have a body. Why? Because if God had body, then it's limited to a position, to basically an area. So, for example, God forbid, astaghfirullah, God forbid, if somebody is here next to me and they say I am God, then he is in this room. He's not anywhere else. So one of the attributes of God is he cannot have a body, because if we put him into a body, then we have limited God. So God is everywhere. He is everywhere. He is at all time, and we cannot put him in a time frame or basically um, uh, time or place, basically in any place and frame. Okay, and he doesn't change. He doesn't basically get into he doesn't evolve, right? He doesn't all of a sudden exist. No, his attributes and his being always been there, is there, will be there, and it's all into one. Okay. Okay. Now the attributes that we basically talk about, um, there are some, we're going to talk about the reasons. Okay, like for example, some reasons, or in some conditions, okay, some things that are necessary, and there are some things that basically is replaceable. Okay, for example, let's give an example of somebody who's doing farming. Okay, if we're planting a seed, okay, and we're watering the seed to grow into a soil or any farm, okay, the seed and water and basically, let's say, fertilizer and things like that, these are basically the necessities that are exchangeable. Okay. Um, I'm sorry. For the seed to grow, I'm sorry, let's put it this way. For the seed to grow, it needs the soil, it needs the water, it needs sun, it needs good weather, right? But then whoever plants it is replaceable. That's better. That's a better, clear example. Okay. So the existence of things, okay, some things are temporary and can be replaceable, And then some things is necessary. It has to exist. Okay. So we're gonna also talk about that is something not replaceable. It's impossible to replace God with anything else other than God itself. So that's why we say that there's no God but God. La ilaha illallah. Right? Um, God has we divide God's attributes in two, and I'm gonna end with this. The attributes that basically are in its being and its essential beings, and then there are attributes that we see the reflection of. Okay, so what does it mean? Means, like, for example, his existence, well, being is always there, right? So that's his basically essential existence and his essential attribute. And then there's attributes, like, for example, when we see he's generous, okay? He's giving us all the sustenance, he's Rahman, for example, you know? That is what we see as the effect on us. It doesn't mean that it's a separate attribute. No. It doesn't mean just because we became to existence, then that attribute all of a sudden came about. No, it's part of God's nature, for example, to be generous and generous. Okay. So these attributes are not something you can take apart or it will come about. Okay. Just because of something became existence or it didn't. So these attributes, just to understand this, is that is philosophy here. I hope I didn't confuse you guys, but the essential and what we call the sifate zati, the essential attributes of God, and then sifate fi'li, the attributes that become as part of the action. You know, they are all one. It's not because of our existence that it came about, but it's part of God's existence and being. Okay, the nature of God. You know, um, unfortunately, some religions and some even sects in Islam um, believe, for example, that um, for example, that God has a hand, has a foot. He comes down Thursdays and then on a donkey or something like that, and then they leave food for the donkey on their rooftop, and they put it into body perspective. These are all wrong, basically. No, God is so great and basically that he's existing everywhere. You're not gonna limit it into a little body or a place or time. He's always there. He's been there, and his existence um, basically is absolute. Basically, okay. So it is almost 9:05, so we have about maybe 8 minutes for prayer time. I hope you guys keep me in your prayers. We're going to continue talking about this topic, which is actually Tawhid, the one God. So the ideology behind any religion or belief. There is a thought process, and we saw the video how basically some group of people they would test us on social media here and there, and they might steer us in a direction. They might have intention behind it and all that. I was kind of saddened that they're using pretty much human as guinea pigs, to test them out. But it was kind of funny clip too. And then we talked about the existence of God and some attributes. And so we'll continue talking about Tawheed, inshallah, on Friday, 8 p.m. Thank you so much. And it's a very meaningful, joyful صلاة المغرب. التماس دعا فعلا خدا